Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Movie Nights, where we're going to be transitioning pretty soon. I'm basically running out of movies. So we're going to be transitioning to a slightly different format in the next couple of weeks pertaining to breaking free of psyops, which is going to be a fun little exercise. Every Monday, we're going to be doing something a little bit different, tackling different minds, lie-ridden minds strewn about the minefield that we're being expected to navigate through pertaining to intelligence agencies often giving us ways of thinking or telling us how to think and feel about all sorts of things, ranging from Russia, from China to Venezuela to Iran to what's going on in space. Most of it is, as you can imagine, lies made and spun by lying liars who are really good at screwing with our field of perception. So we're going to go through an exercise every week of just debunking different aspects of this thing. And you know, hopefully what I'm hoping is that we find our metaphysical mind muscles strengthened every single week as we learn how to do critical thinking on our own without being expected to receive instructions on how to think about any particular thing, but to have the equipment to do it ourselves. So we're going to do that soon. However, we're still in movie night mode. And today we have a special guest from England who I've been impressed by, a researcher, a journalist, a filmmaker, who has been producing some very interesting analysis. And one aspect of his analysis has manifested in a project, a film in 3 parts that will soon be made public. It's not public yet, but we're going to watch a sample of it and I'm going to chat with him. But before we do anything of the sort, we're going to first listen, as we always do, to a couple of words from today's sponsors, beginning with a word from Mike Lindell at My Pillow. So let's hear Mike Lindell.
It's finally here, our 2nd annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, My Pillow mattresses and My Pillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets. Regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our 2nd annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
All right, that was My Pillow, and now let's listen to a word from Conscious Strength. All right, so Maha yourself with supplements that do not suck from Conscious Strength. Founded by Badlands' very own Jordan Sather in 2019, Conscious Strength products are made in America and won't break your bank, unlike other online brands. Their line includes collagen for strengthening joints and hair, electrolytes to get rid of those cramps, green powders that taste good and mixes easy, Shilajit gummies, methylene blue, zeolite, and more. Flip the finger to pharma, be your own doctor, and get supplements that you can trust from Conscious Strength. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/strength to shop now. One more time, badlandsmedia.tv/strength. Link will be in the description below. Okay, cool. So without further ado, let me introduce today's special guest, Jay Davies. Jay, how you doing?
How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you, Matt.
I'm looking forward to this. You and I actually did a little show on Rising Tide Foundation just last week or 9 days ago or so, which was great. We actually did something that were similar to what we're going to do today. Of course, with Rising Tide, we had a live audience and a really fun engagement after watching a sample of one of your 3 films that are going to be part of this politics of belief. And we're going to do something kind of similar today, except we won't have a live audience per se. It's going to be you and I just chatting about some of your research and just sharing thoughts. So
Great.
Can you say a little something about what people are going to be watching today and what this broader project you've put yourself on politics of that's manifested in what will become probably politics of belief as a title. But
Yeah,
a little bit something to set the stage.
well, part one as a biographical piece on Maurice Strong. So basically, to get to part three, we go through Maurice Strong, which is kind of the legitimizing factor, his policies that we can kind of trace in real life, how it's had an effect on us. And then we're going to be looking at the kind of ideological belief system behind not just Maurice Strong, but the wider general movement, and linking it to theosophy. And this final section, it's still not edited. There's still a couple of little glitches. It's a 10-minute section that gives us a rather kind of controversial synopsis of the ideological roots of the United Nations and globalism being steeped in theosophy. And it's kind of dark secret that I believe has been deliberately suppressed due to the nature of the controversy of what is going to be shown. And it's a real mind bender. And to be honest, I'm really interested in your feedback, Matt, to see whether there could be a different way of looking at it, whether it's true or not, whether the statements that I make in this clip is true or not. It's a controversial clip, basically.
Well, that's why people like this channel, is they come here not because things are not controversial. So that's good.
It's a known piece of history. I should say that this is a known piece of history. It's
okay.
None of it's made up. The weighting of it might need adjustment in terms of its effects on society and the world, and how. Anyway, I should let you.
All right, let's do it.
We'll do that bit afterwards, I suppose.
All right, well, check this out. Let's do this. Without further ado, here's the 10-minute teaser video from the film. Oops.
Amongst the growing critics of the United Nations was Constance Cumby. She said something disturbing, that the ideology of the United Nations and the Nazi Party were built on the same spiritual foundations. Both had drawn from the same esoteric doctrine, theosophy.
Pouring over the materials, and came back looking extremely ashen-faced and said, "You're absolutely right. This is Nazism beyond any shadow of a doubt. I don't know how I or anybody else ever missed it."
The same doctrine at the heart of the United Nations vision had also been used by the Nazis. The Nazis had taken theosophy's mystical hierarchy and transformed it into a racial one. The theosophical root race theory, spiritual stages of human evolution, became the foundation for the Aryan myth. The Nazis believed they were the highest race destined to lead. They glorified the countryside, rewrote Christianity, and dreamed of a unified collective bound by blood, soil, and destiny. It was a dark mirror of the same spiritual vision, unity, but through exclusion, purity, and control. The theosophists rejected this interpretation. To them, Hitler's use of their ideas was a grotesque distortion, an inversion of everything they believed. Root races were meant to describe spiritual development, not racial supremacy. Hidden masters were guides of compassion, not war. Where theosophy sought inner evolution and harmony, the Nazis created hierarchy and destruction. However, theosophy did contain anti-Christian and anti-Jewish ideas that influenced Hitler's Third Reich. Its rejection of monotheistic religions and embrace of a mystical evolution of humanity fed into Nazi ideology. And though modern theosophists distance themselves from fascism, echoes of this thinking still remain in the spiritual foundations of today's globalist visions. In the United Nations' dream of unity, one can still detect faint traces of that same esoteric impulse, a world beyond religion, beyond nations, ruled by a hidden order of the enlightened. Amid the devastation of World War II, out of the rubble of cities and the loss of millions, hope was born in the form of the United Nations. It was the most ambitious attempt in human history to unite nations under one vision, a world without war. At the dawn of the UN, Eleanor Roosevelt stood in San Francisco and read the Theosophical Great Invocation, a spiritual call for light, love, and purpose to guide humanity.
Get light and love and hope, restore the track on earth.
Bailey's writings envisioned a world order led by enlightened beings and proposed a unified world religion. Through World Goodwill's formal relationship with the UN and under the broader auspices of Lucis Trust, these esoteric ideas entered a spiritual discourse aligned with UN objectives.
Oh, I think the World Goodwill has been affiliated with the United Nations Department of Information probably from the beginning, but we have always supported the United Nations for its spiritual objectives.
In the 1990s, the United Nations underwent major reforms to address this ideological drift. The goal was to restore Western trust, improve transparency, and rebrand the UN as a pragmatic force for global governance. Robert Mueller, the longtime Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, didn't speak like a bureaucrat. He spoke like a prophet. In official UN materials, he talked of humanity as a single evolving being, guided by spiritual masters toward a planetary consciousness. His World Core curriculum was rooted not in science, but in the esoteric writings of Alice Bailey. He imagined education not as knowledge, but as preparation for a new world order. To some it was visionary, to others it was indoctrination, mysticism repackaged as global policy.
But then, since the children didn't die so quickly anymore.
Do you think the world is going to be a better place next year? In the next decade? Can we end hunger, achieve gender equality, halt climate change, all in the next 15 years? Well, according to the governments of the world, yes, we can. In the last few days, the leaders of the world meeting at the UN in New York agreed a new set of global goals for the development of the world to 2030. And here they are. These goals are the product of a massive consultation exercise. The global goals are who we, humanity, want to be.
But where does this desire come from to manage the planet, to shape human destiny? Behind the charts and slogans of the sustainable goals lies something older, a deeper mythology. The idea that some people, some minds are simply more evolved, that history is a process and that certain individuals have been chosen to guide it. In theosophy, they were called the hidden elect, the initiates, the world servers, beings who had transcended ego, who worked in silence, who helped humanity evolve without ever revealing their hand. Today, they don't wear robes, they run foundations, they give TED Talks, they launch climate initiatives, tech startups, social enterprises. They say they want to change the world, but the impulse is the same, to steer humanity, to shepherd the collective towards some imagined higher state, to act as midwives of evolution. This is the hidden religion of the global elite. Not capitalism, not communism, but transformation. A belief that history must be shaped by the wise, the woke, the worthy, and it's no longer fringe, it's an industry. Philanthropy has become a priesthood, charity work, a form of initiation. NGOs operate like temples, each with their own sacred mission, their own moral dogma, their own vision of the future. They do not rule, but they guide. They do not conquer, but they correct, always nudging the world in one direction, toward equity, sustainability, inclusion, and planetary consciousness. And if you disagree, you're not just wrong, you're unevolved. This is not governance. It is a soft theocracy, not ruled by gods, but by those who believe they have seen the future and feel obligated to deliver it. But this is where the illusion breaks. Because the idea that these people are guardians of evolution, that they are humble servants of humanity's better future, is a lie they tell themselves. In truth, they are something older, something more familiar. They are the new Aryans, not in race, but in role. The original theosophical Aryan was never meant to be white. It was meant to be awakened. A new kind of human, beyond tribe, beyond nation, beyond religion, guided by intuition, by inner knowing, by spiritual alignment with the so-called plan. It was a noble idea, but it opened the door to something else. Because once you believe there is a higher path and that you are on it, then everyone else becomes an obstacle, a problem to be solved, a consciousness to be upgraded or removed. This is exactly what the Nazis did. They took the idea of the Aryan as an enlightened being and made it flesh and blood. They grounded the metaphysics in biology, in blood, in race. And from that inversion, they built a nightmare. Today's visionaries believe they have avoided this fate. They speak not of blood, but of values, not of race, but of identity, not of conquest, but of equity. But they still see themselves as chosen, still believe in the plan, still divide the world between the awakened and the asleep, the evolved and the regressive, the inclusive and the intolerant. And they still believe that only a small group can see clearly enough to lead the rest of us into the light. This is not progress. It is the return of the same old myth, reborn in softer language, dressed in corporate slogans and NGO smiles. But beneath it, the archetype is the same, the enlightened elite, the hidden elect, the new Aryans. And they are no less convinced than the last ones that humanity must be purified, this time not through war, but through consensus. Not through violence, but through systems. Not through camps and guns, but through policies, education, algorithms and language. This isn't evolution. It's domination, disguised as enlightenment.
That was quite the intense introduction to your research, Jay. Yeah, I don't have any problems with what you said, and I find, if anything, the way you put into words the diagnostic of the psychodynamics that gives rise to fascism in any of its colorings, whether left or right flavors of it, is very good, because it really comes down to the sense of elitism, right? And this idea that you have a divine, you and the people who think just like you, who have been initiated into the thing that you've been initiated to, have a divine ordained mission, and anybody else who has another way of seeing things is a problem that has to be solved. That's the key. And it doesn't matter whether you find yourself on a Klaus Schwabian, Maurice Strongian sort of left wokist pathway, or on a right Hitlerian fascist pathway. It's kind of the same core foundation. Most people don't catch that, and you put that into words very eloquently. I really appreciated that.
Cool. Well, I suppose for me, the film is kind of looking to address the kind of liberal fascist strain, really, the stuff that's coming from the United Nations. I think when you kind of look at this and kind of think about the implications of this being true, that in 1945-46 we defeated the Nazis, but the ideology then leapt almost before Hitler was dead into the United Nations. So for me, just getting my head around that was kind of is enough. But we're looking, I think, at this kind of subject of anti-white sentiment that's being kind of created in society. I'm wondering whether that is a kind of result of basically a kind of playbook that was played during fascism, how Hitler kind of created unity post World War I into this kind of all-powerful seeing, believing unit from dispersed areas of Germany. I'm seeing the United Nations role is to do the same thing, these separate nations to be brought into one. And similar with the Aryan narrative, which was used as a racial kind of device, we're kind of almost seeing it being done in reverse today, where the modern Aryan is a kind of woke supremacist or a kind of moral supremacist. and the same kind of demonization of the out group is happening today with whites. So I'm wondering whether the kind of modern Aryan on a dark, this is a dark interpretation of what was said there, is kind of the global majority is being kind of groomed into this hatred of the white in a very similar way, using a very similar method. And I think the fact that we haven't really discussed as a society this kind of weird link between history, you know, becoming, it's whether how much we weight, are we living in a theosophical world order? There's a weight to an argument, and I'm wondering whether I put too much weight to the theosophical influence of the United Nations, whether it was more the Fabian part or whether the balance is right. I'm trying to get the tone right.
So maybe could you expand upon that a little bit, because I think the audience is aware of the Fabian Society. I would expect the audience to be aware of the Fabian Society as a nefarious agency within history, but also they're aware of the Theosophists. They probably have a critical view of the Theosophist movement as a society that formed in 1875, which has a very, very, I mean, I think you're correct to put a lot of emphasis on the influence of the Theosophists onto the globalist structures, especially after World War II. But maybe could you say a little something about the intersection of these two? How do they overlap? Because they aren't really totally separate, even though one professes to be very materialistic, Darwinian, the other one not so much at all. But yet, could you maybe speak a little bit about the overlapping intersectionality of the two?
That was the weirdest part of the investigation, was finding that Fabianism is a kind of mirror of theosophy. So when I was trying to weight between the two, it was very difficult to kind of work out. So the tenets of Fabianism is a kind of eugenic evolution model that's kind of very, they're basically talking about directed evolution, which is how I like to describe eugenics, not the biological sense, but the kind of cultural sense. And I think what happened was that the kind of bureaucratic side of the British Empire, the socialist side, was stale. And also Julian Huxley left after 2 years, the UN. I'm trying to, do you know anything about that period of how, why did the Fabians only last for 2 years, or how did Huxley only last for 2 years? Do you know anything about that?
I suspect I've thought about it because it is anomalous. When you look at the causal top-down directive role of a lot of these Fabians, like Huxley, in creating UNESCO, which he directly, I mean, this is a very influential institution, right? I mean, UNESCO is big.
Wrote the philosophy of UNESCO as well. So wrote the blueprint as well. Have you seen the philosophy of UNESCO?
Oh, I read that. Yeah, that was one of the earliest things I read when I was trying to make sense of things back 20 years ago. Yeah, that's a shocking document, and it's so explicit, right?
Yeah.
As far as the ambition, the goals, the motives of making eugenics rehabilitate and become the queen of sciences, and to infiltrate the schools so that we can focus on the young and get the young to recognize the necessity of world government. He's very explicit in the first 20 pages. It's all there. But then you're right. He sort of steps away from that. And part of me was thinking, well, maybe that had something to do with his over-enthusiasm for eugenics. And, you know, he was the president of the British Eugenics Society. It might have been too loud and too quick at that time. And maybe they had to pull back for branding's sake some of that loudness.
But my understanding that the British Empire's administrative apparatus was absorbed into the UN, along with a lot of Fabian kind of practitioners from the empire. The UN became the kind of new custodian of that administrative process. Do you get that?
I get that to a certain extent, but there's still, like, the UN, the whole discussion of the UN itself is so, it does have a touch of nuance to it, because there was, before and after it was created, a battle over what it would be. And there was a frustration that I've detected amongst high-level grand strategists over how it is insufficient and needs to be either amplified or transcended of what it currently is constituted around. Because I think at the time after Hitler and the broader fascist project was defeated, there were many statesmen enlivened by the concept of a world free of empire and imperialism, and animated instead by sovereign nation states cooperating around
soft power.
Um,
Soft power.
Well, you know, there was a healthy idea of ending hunger, ending poverty, like doing the sorts of things you see with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which on the surface seem more or less kind of okay, but it's the devil's in the details, right? But those ideas of like the four freedoms, like the concept that every human being on earth has the inalienable right to be free of hunger, to be free of fear of war, to be free of the fear of secret police. These were concepts that were enshrined into, I think, a lot of the original the original language of the charter as it was originally proposed in the late 40s, 44 or so as the first draft. That again enshrined the idea that sovereign nation states are immutable. You can't have a world government. You can't govern with it. The UN was supposed to be a domain for dialogue, discussion, harmonizing ideas to avoid wars. So that idea is not so bad. It's not like the League of Nations that was, largely the outcome of H.G. Wells's dystopic vision. But then you had these other things inserted into it, these other articles that allowed for things that were not supposed to be permitted, like the creation of regional blocks. That's what gave legal rise to the European Union or NATO, was this Article 52 and 54. So they just inserted that last minute in the San Francisco conference to make it more weaponizable and usable as a tool of neocolonialism. But they always, and even today, that's why they had to create things like the R2P protocol under Tony Blair and Malik Brown in the 90s, was because the UN Charter didn't allow for things like the bombing of Iraq or shock and awe. They needed something that would then legally justify getting around the non-intervention of a strong state into a small country for preemptive military purposes. So that's the R2P responsibility to protect. So they've always found this. I don't think it's been it's not like the empire completely became the UN, but it did infiltrate many of its systems for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it.
And so you said the Nazis were defeated. So what's your point of view on, did America inherit through paperclip and other those things the knowledge and the power and the intelligence and the money of fascism or the Nazis?
Wait a minute, this is my show. I see what you're doing. You're turning the tables.
Well, am I? Well,
it's fine. I'm playing around.
So let me carry my point. So basically, the continuity of power from the money of into the Swiss banks, the continuity of intelligence that went through paperclip. I'm trying to still get my head around how the principles or the ideological roots of this new age that they're creating. Hitler, his empire was based on a similar interpretation of those same principles. That to me it seems to be true historically. It can only be that theosophy hasn't had that much weight in shaping the 17 sustainable goals, the oligarchy, the people's minds. But I don't think that's true. I think that there's a kind of, I think there's an underground part of theosophy that I'm not aware of. There's a bigger, wider network maybe at play than I'm giving credit for. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, well, for sure. I think one thing that people researching theosophy tend to encounter is that there is openly acknowledged. Blavatsky, the founder of it, did create something called the esoteric section, which was sort of the inner council of theosophy. And the esoteric section had amongst its leading founding members those who had created the Isis Urania Lodge, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn Lodge.
Is this while she was in London? Is this when Blavatsky came to London?
Yeah, after she was taken down and exposed as a fraudster in IDR, she basically had to take a step back and regroup and recalibrate a little bit in London. And that was, I think it was 1887 is when the esoteric section was officially created. And, that already acknowledges that there is a separate inner teaching structure that is different from the outward teaching structure that 97% of the theosophical members and supporters were allowed to believe in. So you already have the exoteric, esoteric dual teaching, which is sort of emblematic of every mystery cult going back to ancient Gnostics and earlier days, right? That's the way how these societies work. So I would say, yes, what we're seeing on the people hear the sustainable development goals and they're like, oh yeah, sounds nice. Ending hunger, ending poverty, fresh water for everybody. Sounds good. on an exoteric level, for the uninitiated, it's true.
For sure.
But then it does seem like you said that there's another separate thing going on as far as what that actually means and how to do those things, which is where the devil is in the details, as Ben Franklin warned us so long ago. And it does seem like, there is this parallel, deeper, much more hard fascist, very, very dark movement embedded toxically within the thing that does seem to have some overlap with Nazism. So maybe on your perspective, in your research so far, have you looked at the pre-UN, the years leading up to Nazism, as far as having been influenced by the New Age theosophical followers in the, let's say, earlier 1900s, pre-World War I, or even during or after World War I?
No, I think my kind of focus was more. In fact, what was the latest thing that I found? There was an influential book, wasn't there? To the Theal Society, that was written by an English MP. One of the Bibles of the Third Reich was written by a British MP, and I found out about it. It was from LaRouche's, going through the old intelligence files from the reports from the LaRouche. It'll come to me, but basically, so the Theal Society, and around that, I've been aware of to a degree. The von List. So in my film, I kind of credit theosophy with Nazism, which is technically not right thing to do. I think it's okay to leapfrog von List and the kind of twisted interpretations that led to Nazism. The film doesn't credit Nazism with theosophy so much. It's kind of trying to tell a very complicated story, which I think any theosophist would appreciate, not being kind of given, not taking something that's very sensitive, that's difficult to understand, and trying to talk of it. I think will piss off quite a few theosophists, me trying to broach this subject. But I think it's worth broaching. I think we've got to look at what's gone wrong with the United Nations globalism, to learn from it, so we don't repeat the mistakes, which are obviously, that's an idealistic perspective. They like the mistakes, don't they?
They do. Well, I've noticed that a lot of what you're saying dovetails, the original question I had too. It's hovering here too, this overlap of what seems to be two opposing doctrines of the Fabian Society eugenics materialist crowd, of direct eugenics, directed control over society through infiltration, permeation, and the coexistence of the theosophists that seem to be anti-materialist, very much based upon these fantastical cosmologies of secret chiefs, ascended masters communicating to the elect, root races that transcend and replace each other over these mega scales of time, of which I think we're in the fifth root race or something right now, according to this model of that Blavatsky and others had advanced, and which Hitler also appears to have really believed in. So there is this.
Well, that is the Aryan myth, comes from Blavatsky's root race. I think we are currently in Aryan now. I believe, and
Oh, yeah.
we're about to go into the next unnamed root race in the next 1,000 years or something.
Yes.
But this
Yeah,
is directed evolution, and I believe that if this is true, that they're kind of evolving the planet and wars and everything to create this kind of peace on Earth eventually is their goal from the theosophist kind of perspective. So basically, humanity and countries aren't allowed to coexist and just get on without any kind of human intervention. That everything's got to be packaged into a situation where we have to change, transform, metamorphosize society to perfect itself. So I think world peace could probably happen if the UN didn't exist, and countries are allowed to have, kind of bilateral agreements, I suppose, is how it's defined in today's environment. That is the ideal situation. It's these multilateral agreements that's kind of basically creating policy through the sustainable goals and then shaping. So in the UK, we've had attacks on the farming and food production, and energy is just ridiculous in the UK at the moment. It's kind of practically causing civil war, the kind of the government here at the moment. And I think a lot of that kind of change is being pushed by this kind of impulse to direct evolution. They're almost have no purpose, the elites, unless they're directing evolution. They need to stop, and then everything would get better.
Yeah, right. Well, it's weird. It's like when you feel like you yourself are of a superior species because whatever your blood is just pure because your family was born richer into these elite classes or castes, and that must necessarily mean that the others, the majority born into poorer, lower castes, must be inferior. If they were superior, they would be the ones enslaving you after all, right?
But that's the moral language of today, is it not?
Yeah, it's like it's that sloppy. At the end of the day, it's that simplistically sloppy. It's not. There is a lot of sophisticated jargon to try to like create subterfuge to make this not so clearly obvious, but that really is at the kernel of it all. And then in that point, what's the purpose of life but to maintain the system of superiority from those who are inferior, who think that they're somehow, that they have somehow God-given rights? That you have to stop that. That's a problem. That's an affront on the natural order of things. So I guess
I think they are doing that at the moment by creating this new public dynamic where moral supremacy. I think the world order that we're living in is kind of a strange mirror of Nazi Germany, where the kind of world order is created around this moral instead of a racial supremacy. That the environment and ecology is divine, the Gaia kind of element. There's so many theosophical principles that the Nazis used that's embedded into the UN goals, that without those goals, which are so lovely, the 17, get rid of poverty, gender equality, all those wonderful things, is the kind of is this framework that's creating these conditions for this kind of mythology, which I think is a really important word to use. There's a kind of some elements of the language that are getting kind of whittled out of humanity, the soul being one. No one talks about the soul anymore, humans having a soul. And then this kind of, what was the other one which I said? I've lost it now.
Oh,
the racial supremacy, the kind of basically the mythology, that was it. That the stories we tell ourselves and society tell themselves, the story that Hitler gave Germany is the similar story to what the UN's given during woke. Does that make sense?
It does.
It's a mythology that basically, the use of mythology is what I think is the power of the UN. It's creating the story that's galvanizing this kind of transformation shift, that the people who are rejecting the kind of evolution, the people who, I say separateness is one of the key tenets of this new world order.
Mhm.
That if you see yourself as separate to anybody else or the planet, that puts you on a hit list for them. So we see a lot of the kind of gaming of kind of populations into the civil war kind of formation. It's basically kind of, yeah, it's very similar. I believe that this, if thought about more, kind of might reveal a playbook where the mythology is being built around us to prepare, to accept, to be balkanized into your tribe. And I think if they did create civil conflict on a racial level, then the global minority will be kind of erased out of the picture. That's the dark reading from why are they using, is this a playbook, basically?
Yeah. Well, and the hypocrisy of it all is that while they promote this as their system of control, they actually are creating a desired fragmentation. So they're promoting this holistic oneness on the surface, but the outcome that they desire is actually fragmentation that could then be better weaponized in a divide to conquer kind of mentality. And they themselves do not see themselves as being one with the riffraff slaves. They see themselves as being very apart from and separated from the slaves that
the hidden elect.
Yeah.
Well, I think Foundations and the kind of oligarchy structure was very much based on that kind of archetype. They love to see themselves as the hidden elect of having a higher purpose than just inheriting wealth from a robber baron. They're now kind of some priestly class with their power. And it's an interesting one.
Well, have you noticed that a lot of these theosophical and hermetic order, like Golden Dawn kind of secret societies, they always split off. Like they fragment so easily in internal like battles and disputes, and then one member is like, no, Kutumi is telling me this, you're wrong, and then they battle over some like, I don't know, detail, right, of like how to interpret Blavatsky's writings. And then they go and create their own Crotona Lodge, and this person goes and creates their own other lodge, and they just split and subdivide. And Anton LaVey's second in command is like, no, the hidden masters are telling me this is the type of satanic agency we should be creating to usher in the age of Seth, not the age of Horus. I'm going to go create my own thing, and they just, it's like a head of the Hydra that then when you map out what they're doing. Some of these Hydra heads are creating radical right movements, and some of these Hydra heads spin off and then infiltrate and then generate radical left movements, like the Bolsheviks versus the National Socialists. They kind of have similar esoteric inner beliefs,
influencing both sides, making sure they're kind of still in control of both sides.
Yeah, it's it seems like that's the recipe book at the very least in its simplistic term, which is why people like Annie Besant would, on the one hand, be a racist eugenicist with the Fabian Society, and at the same time go ahead and become the head of the Theosophists at the same time as you're representing the interests of empire internationally, but at the same time creating and then becoming the president of the India Free Congress Party, right? To champion Indian independence away from colonialism. Like all of these seeming discontinuities and contradictions are actually not so, from a top down perspective, it makes sense how they can be playing these different sides. But from a bottom up standpoint, it seems super absurd and like irrational.
Well, there's a bishop or somebody I was watching on YouTube, somebody that had some relationship to royalty, to the Queen Mother. He was a bishop during her reign or something, and I emailed him and said, look, this to me looks like this is theosophy, pantheism. What Prince Charles was always known for hugging trees and kind of being an ecologist, and is definitely a major proponent of the kind of the environmental kind of stuff going on, and he's kind of has a strange relationship with Islam, where the country is kind of really being transformed into an Islamic state, and with his blessing, and he's really seems to be pushing it, and it's yeah, he seems to be a kind of figurehead of some kind of this theosophical strain of thinking, I put it.
Well, I think Vandana Shiva plays a big role also in the formation of his identity. Have you looked into Vandana Shiva?
Right. Okay.
Like,
no, I haven't. I would
like
to understand this phenomena.
Yeah. No, she's a big hero amongst the the alt media, anti-Bill Gates sort of community has really fallen for her stories because she's a critique, and rightfully so, of the abuses of Monsanto and Big Pharma and things like that.
Yes,
so,
I've the Indian lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prince Charles has like a whole shrine to her in the backyard of I don't know which one of his palaces. And she's like, he's called her his guru. And she's actually responsible for a massive genocide in Sri Lanka, where they actually adopted her protocols for getting rid of all industrial farming in 2020. I think it was 2021 or so, and just go.
No, this is different. Really,
full organic, and their food crops.
She caused that crisis.
Oh yeah.
That was the first crisis, wasn't it, of the UN? Well, not the first crisis of the UN, but regarding the 17 sustainable goals, or was there something before that?
Well, this is a relatively new thing in like 2021. Yeah. So this is the UN Sustainable Development Goals were announced in whatever 2000 or something, but
2015.
Oh, that's when they were officially announced. Okay,
when they were adopted,
it was the Millennium Goals, right? It was the Millennium Goals in 2000, and then it was the Sustainable, right?
And then the Earth Charter as well, which is a hoot.
Oh, you want to say something about that?
Well, just I did find it kind of quite like the predecessor to the 17 sustainable goals, but it was his story of having the Ark of the Covenant. He kind of created a kind of a shrine for his new 10 commandments, basically. And I think that was the outrage between Constance Cumby, who the woman in my clip. She was a lawyer from Chicago, a Christian lawyer, and I think she was the one that really put the UN under pressure to abandon this kind of Nazi, she was the one that was calling it Nazism. I think that's why I put Kofi Annan in around that period. I think the UN was despiritualized out of the language post Robert Mueller or Mueller. Is it Mueller or Mueller?
I've heard different people say different things, so I don't even know anymore.
Yeah. Probably Mueller if he's European. Was he Portuguese? No, that was Antonio, wasn't it? Anyway, yeah. So basically, yeah, it's a weird one.
Well, I got this thing. Have you seen this? The Terra Carta and Astra Carta?
Hell no.
No, you haven't? This is it's interesting. This is the actual official logos. One was set up. The Terra Carta was set up in 2021, and the Astra Carta in 2023. Here we can just go to AI overview here. It says here, the Terra Carta and Astra Carta are sustainable initiatives launched by King Charles III via the Sustainable Markets Initiative.
Yes. I didn't know they were called that, but yeah, during COVID, he came out with his thing, didn't it?
Yeah, and it's so, like, it just shows the sick God complex of these people, where, like, the Astra Carta extends these principles of the Magna Carta, which were then extended, these are just words. There's no legally binding anything to this, but to the whole Earth in the Terra Carta, which is kind of like the Earth Charter of Maury Strong and Stephen Rockefeller and Gorbachev, to the entire universe, extends these principles to outer space, providing a framework for sustainable space exploration, mitigating space debris. Like, the entire universe, you're saying, is basically under the mandate of the Guardians, which is basically King Charles and his cohort.
Do you remember that in my film that I sent you, that there's a documentary that I've made. There was a section in the Russian oligarch's mansion.
I do remember that, yeah.
Inside that, the original documents of the Millennium documents were in that property, and the anarchists stole them. One of my friends, or one of the people that I was filming, stole the documents, the originals. And that was a Russian oligarch called Andrei Gonchienko, whose mansion was kind of taken over by the anarchists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thought it's a side story, but definitely the Millennium Goals and all that is definitely a fascinating part of history.
Do you want to say something about how the Maurice Strong was a directing force behind a lot of this, and what was his Agenda 21, and how did it like transmogrify into like Agenda 2030 and these other things that we're living through?
So it was what? It was 92, wasn't it, Rio, that the Agenda 21 was signed in. And he was trying to get, I think, the Earth Charter signed in at the same time, but it was rejected. And that's where it kind of went and got repackaged into the 17 Sustainable Goals. So it went from the Earth Charter. This is not me hypothesizing. They wouldn't say this, but it's kind of obvious that if you look at the theosophical goals of what they believe, and then it just fits perfectly over the 17 Sustainable Goals and its mission. This is a theosophical set of principles it can be interpreted as. But then it kind of went into Agenda 2030, didn't it, from 21. Haven't got much to say about that, apart from that the 17 Sustainable Goals is basically, there's a metric system. So the tenets of technocracy is to have results-based policies where the kind of, so I believe there's portals you can get into where you can see the current status of the goal, whether we're achieving it or not. So it's like a metric system that they'll kind of be running in real time eventually, no doubt, along with the centralized business currency. Have you kind of, you're obviously well aware of that, the BIS, the kind of, what was it called? They have
international settlements, you mean? Or?
Yeah, they've got this kind of new digital currency infrastructure that I've forgotten what it's called now. Just strange theosophical names for them all. And yeah, I think that's kind of that's going to be the big one. I think AI and the currency will make all this other stuff really just child's play or kind of irrelevant.
Right.
I think.
Well, I've noticed that on the green front, at least, certain things aren't necessarily falling into plan the way they would have liked it to on the whiteboard 30 years ago. Like there does seem to be a disjointedness between theory, abstract theory, and the practical realities of applying this theory to the world, which gives me a certain sense of optimism to a certain limited degree. But like one thing I've noticed is that they've had to scrap over the last couple of years, actually really just over the last year, they've had to scrap their, what's it called? The UN International Climate Compact, which they spent like 30 years building up as far as like binding agreements to get the biggest companies of the world representing like $130 trillion of capital to sign on to this new protocol to reduce their carbon, like basically create a new green credit metric that would only incentivize activity that would reduce the global human footprint. And they spent so much time. This is like Maurice Strong's life's mission was to get this enshrined. Mark Carney did so much to pull everybody together and finally finalize it and announce it in 2020. And then earlier this year, or I guess end of last year, they had to have this emergency meeting where they just agreed unanimously to just abolish it, to just scrap it. Which I find interesting, because why would
the shift to AI super kind of centers and the amount of energy that they produce, it's a strange how they've gone from climate 1 minute to kind of complete combustion to the next.
Well, even their idea like
control.
Well, even the moratorium on nuclear reactors that they spent so long, like Maurice Strong was the first person to install a moratorium back in 1980 in Canada when he was still the head of Petro-Canada up here in Canada. Like, so that's where I live. And he did the first sort of moratorium to say we're going to stop building civilian nuclear reactors, which they stopped building. We haven't built a new one for like 45 years.
Criminal.
Oh, yeah. and then he worked to shut them down in Ontario as well when he was heading Hydro Ontario in the 90s. So he tried to shut the whole thing down. But what he did was used as a program for European countries, for Germany, for France, for other countries to try to say, okay, we're going to stop building new ones for the US. And even that they're trying to sort of pull back and reverse course on, because they realize they're what they want to do, both for their, like, on the one hand, their technocratic panopticon of AI management. It doesn't work if you don't have nuclear power. You can't do it on windmills and solar panels.
Yeah.
And number two, it seems a lot of civilizational forces in the world. Unfortunately, I don't see too much here in my Western part of the world, but you do seem to have nation states that no longer want to kill off their populations and erase their civilizational traditions, who are instead going for advanced industrial investments and things that are going to keep them protected from the oncoming shockwaves. So to defeat that, you can't go for windmills. If you want to actually do battle and destroy all of these resistance, these voices, these movements of resistance in different parts of Eurasia and stuff, and Africa, you got to have strong power. You have to have like nuclear power if you want to smash it.
I actually downloaded their recent population report. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it was from 2024. Basically, it does seem that the whole kind of world that they're predicting has changed. I think they're going for population crisis is the new drama now, and how China with the one-child policy is really ending up kicking them in the ass. There's a theory that China is under some kind of population threat, and along with Japan and everywhere else, that is they're no longer looking at the depopulation narrative, which I don't know how much of the depopulation narrative they've ever pushed, but there was definitely that was the kind of PR that they picked up along the way. But now they seem to be charting a different kind of angle completely.
Well, I noticed that because the Club of Rome brought in like the one-child policy into China in the late 70s was brought in by the Club of Rome. Yeah, it's actually
wow.
Yeah,
I did not know that. Wow.
One of the conditions around which Kissinger arranged to supply, because China had been suffering. They were like a third world country in the 60s, and they were suffering. They didn't have enough industrial. They had very few factories existed. They weren't really able to sustain themselves very well. They'd been still suffering under the century of humiliation. They hadn't recovered in any way. So there was this offer Kissinger made to say, okay, you will be in the new order. We're going to have like producers, workers who make things, and consumers in the first world who consume things that they won't make anymore. And we're going to outsource our jobs to the dirty people who will stay poor, but they'll make money just enough to not drown. And we're going to start buying into, like, cheap stuff from China. Came out of that whole Kissinger movement. And he said, you can have some of these factories, we can start outsourcing them to you. We'll start using your labor for cheap, $1 a day or less or whatever, because you don't have like labor laws and you have low living standards. So we can exploit that, and have like an evil win-win.
What year was Kissinger doing this with China? In the 50s?
70 and 73.
Okay.
So
it had nothing to do with a Great Leap Forward and all the famine and...
No, that came earlier. That came earlier. But the Cultural Revolution seemed to be very much tied to... I mean, in my research, it's something to... There does seem to be an overlap with Maurice Strong there through his aunt, Anna Strong, who was an advisor to Mao and was very good with the Gang of Four, which was running the... Who was
an advisor to Mao?
Anna Strong. The aunt
Anna or Hannah?
Anna, A-N-N-A.
Her sister.
That's his aunt. She died in 73, but she was an advisor to Mao.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you mention Jeffrey Sachs was at the University of Beijing?
He's been brought into infiltrate.
That's where Maurice ended up, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Maurice, when he escaped arrest by going off, he was going to go to jail for his crimes under the UN Food for Oil.
Oh, he got that, did it?
Yeah, I remember. To avoid arrest, he basically went off to China to spearhead the infiltration of the green agenda into the Chinese and to brainwash the Chinese managerial class. and he had a lot of he basically had a certain degree of limited success in the University of Beijing, creating a Department of Sustainable Development, pretty much, which Jeffrey Sachs was also a part of. And yeah, that was part of their brainwashing operation to infuse the decarbonization agenda, which fortunately China rejected in 2009 at the COP14 summit. I don't know if you remember that, but basically that was the summit right in the midst of the bird flu, the banking collapse of 2008 was still heavy. There's still a big recession. And the promise of Obama and company was that we're going to have COP14 and we're going to come out of this with legally binding decarbonization protocols for the world. And that was the big promise and the hype. And then you had, a week before the summit, you had the East Anglia climate gate leaks, right? Where it was revealed that East Anglia University, that controls all the data sets and modeling used by all the universities for promoting man-made climate change, was a fraud. You had the inner emails of I forgot the guy's name, but the head of the climate what's called the climate, I don't know, the name of the climate department. Thousands of emails telling his colleagues to suppress information that proves that global warming is actually not happening. And it all went public. And then that took a lot of the wind out of the sails. And then finally, the Chinese and the Indian delegation with, I think, Sudan, locked themselves in a room for like the entire conference. They wouldn't come out and they wouldn't sign anything. And everybody had to leave the summit, basically apologizing, saying it was a failure. We'll try again later. So Maurice Strong was pissed because he died in 2015. But they've been trying again to circle back and do that. But I think that was at the same time that China began to end their one-child. That's when they pushed back and stopped the one-child policy thing, and they expanded it to 3 kids now, and they're realizing that they've the damage that they did to themselves by allowing Kissinger's program in the Club of Rome into their world in the 70s. It's like you said, it's created such a crisis of underpopulation now that they're trying to incentivize having more babies and stuff. So, yeah.
Could it be that was a maneuver in the interest of America? Is that me? Am I okay?
Damn it, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Now,
hello?
I feel like it's probably my computer's hardware. This happened to me yesterday during a live stream as well, where I think the audience can hear you, but they can't hear me, but I can't hear you, which is a problem.
Yeah. We can stop the recording and reboot it. Do an end section if you want. This has been my most fun show yet. Can you hear me? Hello, 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 hello.
Speak again.
Hello, 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 hello.
All right, so tell you what, the way we're going to do this, because I can't hear you right now, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to do some closing thoughts. And then when I stop seeing your lips moving, I will close the show out, unfortunately. So maybe, Jay, I know this sucks, eh? As closing thoughts, I'm so sorry, folks, for the audience, but I'm going to get Jay back on. We're going to keep talking in the future. When can people expect to see this? When do you hope to get this film series public? I see that's almost done. There's still some edits that need to be done to tighten it all up a little bit more, but you're so close. How can they follow you and really support your work? And any closing thoughts you'd like to leave people with to chew on for the remainder of the days and weeks ahead?
All right. So, well, closing thoughts on the film. I would be interested in the comments to get people's feedback. I know I'm interested. James Lindsay has been talking about this subject for a long time now, and I'm kind of curious to gauge people's reaction to this final piece of the puzzle. So yeah, I'm kind of interested in hearing people's comments. And my Twitter or my X account is the letters you see on my user screen, the IMWTBF. It's a cipher of In My Way to Be Free, which is my YouTube channel. And Modern History is my Substack, so you can check me there. And hopefully I'll be releasing part 2 of the film in the next kind of month, and I'll probably part 3 will come either in part 2 or soon after.
All right. I can only presume that Jay has stopped speaking. My computer is dying on me right now. My camera just fell apart. I don't know if it's the Jay. Can you still hear my words? Can I still be heard?
I still hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know whether it's my hardware is just simply dying at an inopportune moment, or perhaps certain people out there didn't want this conversation to continue onward. My conspiratorial mind can only assume. I don't know. But thank you, Jay, for sharing your research and your work. Thank you, everybody, for coming on for today's show. And we'll see you next week for either a movie night or perhaps a Breaking Free of PsyOps night. We'll see. Either way, it'll be enriching. So take care and have a great night.